security features, we expect to have connectivity between the router 1, router 2, router 3, and router 4. Let me to verify the connectivity. From the R1, we can use ping command, ping, and then, for example, first the IP address of the router 3, 10.233. Okay, this is the first command. As you can see, we have connectivity. Again, ping 10.244 means this is the IP address of the router 4. As you can see, we have connectivity. Then from the router 3, let me to send traffic to the router 4. This is the router 3. Okay, ping 10.244. As you can see, we have connected. Because of that, we can start the configuration of the zone-based firewall. Until now, we have a connectivity between the router 1, router 2, router 3, and router 4. It is so important to verify that we have connectivity before the configuration of any security features, because you should first ensure that everything is connected to each other. Then you can apply your security feature to have control over the connectivities. About the zone-based firewall, let me to say that it is the most advanced method of a stateful firewall that is available on Cisco IOS routers. The idea behind ZBF or ZBFW is that we don't assign the like the ACL, okay, to the policies to the interface. Actually, we will use another feature, we call it zone. Okay, actually we will define some zones and some interface in those zones, and after that we can apply our policies to those zones. Let me to explain the configuration of zone-based firewall. First, you should configure the different zones, for example, inside zone, outside zone, DMZ zone. You know that we should assign policies to the communication between the zones. Because of that, we need zones. Here we have 3 zones. In one zone, you can apply 1 interface, 2 interface, or maybe more. Okay, but here in each zone, we have only 1 interface. How we can define the zones? Here you can see the command. It is so easy. Zone security and then zone name. If you want, you can assign description. First, you should define the zone, and after that, you should configure the interfaces as a member of these zones. It is so easy. Let me to write here the configuration. After that, we can copy this configuration, or we can use this configuration in the CLI. Here in the router 1, the first command is the zone security. Look at here, it is so easy. Zone security, it is a security zone because we have other type of zones. Zone security, then the name of this zone is inside. Look at here, this is the name of our zone. You can use any name. After that, if you want, this is optional, you can configure description. For example, here I want to configure description. Don't forget, you should configure the zones in the router 2. Here the border router is the router 2. Because of that, let me to go to the router 2. Here in the router 2, I'm going to configure zones. First, zone security, the name of this zone is inside. That's it. And then description. About the description, you can configure any description. For example, let me to use inside, then zone. That's it. So easy. Then we need to configure the next zone, zone security. Okay, and then the name of this zone is, for example, outside. Okay, and then description is the outside, okay, zone. That's it. And finally, we have the next zone, zone security, DMZ or demilitarized zone. Okay, and after that, description. Okay, description is the DMZ zone. Okay, here now we have 3 zones, but let me to say that actually, when you didn't configure any zone, you have one default zone in the router 2. We call it self zone. I will explain the self zone, but for now, let me to configure the zones. After that, after we understand the, for example, user defined zones, we will learn about this self zone also. Here, let me to configure the zones in the router 2, and don't forget, with the show zone security, you can verify the configured zone. Here in the router 2, you know that until now I didn't configure any zone, but with the show zone security, you can easily see that here we have a zone, we call it self zone, and description of this self zone is system defined zone. I will explain the usage of the self zone, but it is not so important for us. Let me to configure terminal. Okay, the first zone security is the inside, that's it. And as you can see, now we go to the new prompt, config security zone, and then here description inside, okay, zone. So easy. Again, exit, again zone security, the new zone name is outside, and after that description, again, for example, outside, then zone. So easy. After that, let me to configure the last zone security, DMZ, and description, DMZ zone. So easy. Now let me to show you the show zone security result. Show zone security can show us now we have 4 zone actually. Zone inside with description of inside zone, zone outside with description of outside zone, zone DMZ with the description of the DMZ zone, and also we have a default zone, self zone actually, system defined zone. So easy. But you know that we didn't assign any interface to this zone. The next step is that configuring or assigning this zone to the interfaces. Here you can see the comments. Interface name, zone member, security, then the zone name. It is so easy. Let me to show you. It is so easy. In the, for example, router 2, again, this is the router 2. We know that here we have interface gigabit 00. For gigabit 00, let me to add one command. The command is zone member, okay, then security. Always you should use the security keyword because we have other type of zones. Zone member security means security zone of, for example, inside. Then here you should use the name of inside. This is the zone member security inside, and then in the interface gigabit 01 zone, again member security, okay, then outside. So easy. And finally, about the interface gigabit 02, we can use zone, then member, again security, and finally, for example, DMZ. That's it. This is the next commands that we should use here in the configuration in the router 2. Configure terminal interface gigabit 00. Let me to show you the command zone member, okay, and then security. And here you have all of the zones that you have configured before: inside, outside, DMZ, and also self. Let me to use inside. This is so interesting that we have the name of the zones that we configured before. Inside, that's it. This is the first command in the router 2. Then interface gigabit 01, again zone member, and after that security, and then outside. So easy. And finally, interface gigabit 02, again zone member, security, and then DMZ. Okay, zone member, security, DMZ. Now again, with the show zone security, that the command that you learned about it before, you can see the result here. We have zone inside, description is inside zone, and member interfaces is gigabit 00. You can assign more than one zone to more than one interface. For example, in the zone inside, you can have, for example, 4 interfaces. It is possible. Zone outside, okay, gigabit 01, and zone DMZ gigabit 02. Now let me to say that we don't have any connectivity between the members of this zone. For example, you know that before configuration of the zone-based security, we had connectivity between the R1, R3, and R4. Now look at here, from the R1, I'm trying to send traffic to the router 3, ping 10233. As you can see, we don't have connectivity. After configuration of the zones, we will not have any connectivity between the zones. Or you should configure policies to have connectivity between the zones. Ping from the R1 to the router 4 now, 10244. As you can see, we don't have connectivity. But here we have one interesting feature. From the self zone, the zone that we have by default in the router 2, you have connectivity to all of the, for example, zones. For example, in the router 2, if you go to the router 2, here you can use ping 10121, the R1 interface. Look at here, or the ping 10233. Look at here, we have connectivity. Or ping 10244, we have connectivity. What does it mean? It means that self zone has connectivity by default to all other zones, only self zone. Okay, but other zones don't have connectivity to the other zones without any policy. We can use self zone for troubleshooting, for maintaining the network. All right, this is the second step. In the second step, we configure the zones. We assign the zone to the interface. Actually, first we configure the zones. Okay, inside, outside.